This is Special Prosecutor Larry Klayman.
I'm the only lawyer ever to obtain a court ruling that a president of the United States committed a crime.
For truth. For competition.
As a young lawyer, I helped break up AT&T. That's why you have all your cell phones today.
For sovereignty. For the Republic.
I'm the guy who, at Judicial Watch, which I founded, uncovered the Chinagate scandal. Millions of dollars going to the Clinton campaign, corrupting our political system.
For the privacy of citizens.
And I'm the only guy to have enjoined the National Security Agency from mass surveillance on hundreds of millions of Americans.
Tearing it up.
I'm the son of meat packers in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. I know how to slice and dice.
Bringing it back.
We're going to take this country apart and put it back together again in the way envisioned by our founding fathers.
It's not just talk.
We're not just regurgitating news stories. Larry Klayman, special prosecutor, is making the news.
And now, here's Larry.
Welcome to this week's edition of Special Prosecutor with Larry Klayman. We have another great show, an important show. Later on, we're going to have Ryan Bundy on, the son of Cliven Bundy of the great Bundy family in Nevada, Bunkerville, Nevada. We know the saga, and we're going to talk more about that because we just filed a new lawsuit. But Ryan is also running for the governorship of Nevada. And it's very important that you hear what he has to say because he represents not just the people of Nevada and his family, but all of the American people. And I want to start with this case that we just filed a few days ago in federal court in Washington, D.C. Of course, we know the whole Bundy saga, the tyranny at Bunkerville. What happened is that Harry Reid, that evil senator, Snidely Whiplash, modern-day version, put in place his hand-picked guy, Neil Cornsey, at Bureau of Land Management, and he also had a judge, Gloria Navarro, appointed to the bench by Barack Obama, none other. And what happened at that point is that the federal government, to use the term very loosely, because I don't consider them to be our government, frankly, we are a government of the people. The federal government, with the exception of President Trump and the people around him, are run by the deep state, the Obama, Soros, and otherwise deep state, is that they tried to seize his land. And Harry Reid, it was reported, was trying to sell the land out from under the Bundys, that's the Bundy Ranch at Bunkerville, to Chinese environmental interests or other third interests. Obviously, since that land was claimed to be owned by the federal government, Harry was going to probably get some kickbacks, along with his crooked son, Rory, a downtown Las Vegas mafia-connected lawyer just like Harry. So what happened at that point? We know that the federal government went in, these goons. They threatened the lives of the Bundys. They threw Cliven's sister, Margaret, to the ground violently. They viciously kicked his dog. They killed cattle, bulls that you need to procreate for the herd, and buried them in a secret mass grave. People around the country saw what was going on. They saw this tyranny. It was at a time that Sean Hannity, and Fox News was actually covering this before Hannity, as he frequently does, ran away from the Bundys. You don't really see anything about either this case that I just filed or anything else with the Bundys on Fox News, and we're going to talk about that in the second segment. But this was ultimate tyranny, government tyranny, overreach, and people came. They came armed. They used their valid Second Amendment rights, their rights of free speech under the First Amendment, and not just the Bundys, but these protesters were attacked by the federal government. And after that happened, Cliven, who stood down the government with his family, with the protesters, eventually the federal government had to leave, the goons. Well, what happened then? We had a White House Correspondents' Dinner with none other than Barack Hussein Obama, then president. And at that White House Correspondents' Dinner, he threatens Cliven because he used the word Negro. After the standoff, Cliven had said, "My family's been treated like the Negro in the Old South. We've been enslaved. The federal government is trying to control every aspect of our lives," because that's what Bureau of Land Management was doing, regulating how he could ranch on his property and his water rights and his grazing rights and everything else. And Obama took offense to that because, according to Obama, the word Negro doesn't apply to black people or African Americans anymore, even though Martin Luther King used the words to refer to his own people. Well, Obama gets up there, and you can see this on our website at ClivenBundyDefenseFund.org. You can also find it at FreedomWatchUSA.org. And Obama gets up there, and he basically threatens Cliven. He says, there are going to be consequences, I'm paraphrasing, when you use the term Negro. Let me serve as a warning and a piece of advice to that Nevada rancher. And, of course, 2 years later, Cliven, his sons, Ryan, Ammon, Davy, and Mel, and several of the peaceful protesters, tens of them, were indicted. And they were indicted both in Oregon and they were indicted in Las Vegas. Cliven wasn't indicted in Oregon. And ultimately, the Bundys won these cases. And they won it because what we uncovered was widespread corruption among the various federal agencies. It was the FBI, the Bureau of Land Management, the Justice Department, who lied to the courts. They hid evidence, exculpatory evidence called Brady material. A whistleblower came forward by the name of Larry Wooten, who said that there was a kill list for the Bundys, that they were being disparaged, their Mormon faith. The Church of the Latter-day Saints, that's the Mormon faith. They were called retards, all kinds of things. There's religious discrimination. Well, throughout this period, I had been lobbying Attorney General Jeff Sessions. I actually talked to him on his cell phone early on when he became Attorney General. He said he'd review the case. I said, this looks like a political prosecution started by Eric Holder, Loretta Lynch, Barack Obama, and others. And he promised me that he would, but he never did that. He hid his head in the sand. He hid under his desk, as he's been doing with regard to the various Clinton scandals, with regard to Fusion GPS, with regard to the FISA warrant, the Steele dossier, and everything else. Sessions has been totally abdicating his responsibility. But then when the case was ultimately dismissed by a hostile judge, Gloria Navarro, who had been appointed by Obama, recommended by Reed, who the mainstream newspaper, Las Vegas Review-Journal, had called a friend of the prosecutors and criticized the prosecutors for violating the constitutional rights of the Bundys and everybody else, Sessions said, well, I'm finally going to review this case. And he had to, because otherwise he would have had more than egg on his face. He would have had something on his rear end at that point. In fact, it would have been coming out of the rear end at that point. It's been coming out repeatedly. And I mean that facetiously, not in an off-color way. But that's what we've been dealing with over there. The French call it merde, M-E-R-D-E. That's the Justice Department today. And he never reviewed it. And to this day, it sits out there. And if you can believe this, Sessions had to have authorized an appeal of the dismissal of the indictment against the Bundys and the others. And that's now at the Ninth Circuit. I'm defending Cliven there and Ryan and just the whole concept. We're going to be defending that. But you have to ask yourself the question, after the government was caught lying, after this whistleblower comes forward, after they hid evidence, after even a hostile judge dismissed the case, Jeff Sessions authorizes his prosecutors to take an appeal, to get the dismissal overturned, to again try to throw the Bundys in prison. And they spent already 2 years in prison, Cliven and Ryan in solitary confinement for a long period of time. Bail was not granted by Judge Gloria Navarro, and there was no reason for that. The Bundys are not a threat to anybody. They never even pointed arms at the federal government during the standoff. But this is the state of the country today. And why is this case so important? It's important because the Bundys are really the first people in modern history to have used their Second Amendment rights peacefully in a major way and stood up to a tyrannical federal government comprised of the goons of Barack Obama and Harry Reid that wanted to take their land away from them. And the land is so important. This is what this country was built on. Look at Israel. This land is our land. Exodus. Land means something, okay? It's constant. It's something you can always depend on. And the Bundys have ranched on that land for 150 years, their family. This is the way of the West. It's the way of the country. People on the East Coast probably can't appreciate it as much as you can in the West. But the Bureau of Land Management and the federal government, who claims to own the land, and they don't, and I brought a lawsuit for Cliven on that to get a declaratory judgment in state court in Nevada, in Clark County. This land is something that is sacred. Okay, it's sacred not just to the Bundys, it's sacred to the Indians, it's sacred to the American people generally. And when the government tries to take that away from you, the last thing that you can depend on, if you ever had to, this is an American tragedy. You know, there are two Hollywood shows now which are kind of takeoffs on the Bundys. One is Heartland. It's produced actually by the Canadians. It takes place in and around Calgary, Canada, because it's much like the American West, rodeos and things like that. And I urge you to watch that. It's on Netflix. It's a great show. It has very positive values. This is the Bundy family in essence. And then there's another show where Kevin Costner is the producer and an actor. It's called Yellowstone. It's on Paramount Network, watch that too. The character, has some flaws. He's not like Cliven. He's not, the best person in the world, but it's the same story with developers, with Bureau of Land Management, with Indian tribes, etc., trying to take the land away from Kevin Costner, who plays the main figure. This is the United States, and Hollywood has seen this, and they've caught on to it. And that's why these Bundy cases are so important. And the one we just filed was filed against Jeff Sessions, Eric Holder, Loretta Lynch, James Comey, and Neil Corsi. Constitutional rights violations. We're asking for millions of dollars of damages. We're not doing it for the money. And Ryan is the lead plaintiff in that case. We're doing it to set an example, to bankrupt these people, to make sure that it doesn't happen to other American citizens like you and me. And that's what we do here at Freedom Watch. We do more than just ask for documents. The former group which I founded, Judicial Watch, that's basically all that they do. Occasionally they have a case. But we do the heavy lifting. We're in court. We're fighting the odds, and we need your help. And you need to support us. So go to freedomwatchusa.org. freedomwatchusa.org. Make as large a tax-deductible contribution as you can. Contribute to ClivenBundyDefenseFund.org. That's a case I brought in my private capacity. And contribute there as well. Because if we don't stand up for the Bundys, we can't stand up for ourselves. The Bundys are a really great family, and Hollywood has even recognized that. Even Hollywood left has recognized it. The Canadian television industry has recognized it. And this is why we, the American people, must support people like the Bundys. Because if not, we will sink into an abyss of not just corruption, but we'll lose our entire country. So I urge you to go to freedomwatchusa.org, sign up for our Justice League, contribute to our cause. We are your Justice Department. We're the only ones out there who are sticking our necks out for the American people. We do more than just appear on cable news or write articles. I do all that as well. Primarily I'm on Newsmax. But I'll be right back with the second segment of Special Prosecutor with Larry Klayman.
Fearless.
Disclaimer, he's crazy, he's racist, he's out to kill the Democrats.
Dangerous.
I don't care, he uses the court and the law.
Lethal.
This is bad.
Special Prosecutor
Very bad.
Larry Klayman.
If you'd like to support Freedom Watch and this radio show, go to freedomwatchusa.org.
I want to announce something that happened this week. We have a document dump. Good word with regard to Robert Mueller. What he's doing is a dump in many ways. But we request documents dealing with his communications with the media. We believe that they're going to show criminal grand jury leaks. Just this week, we had more leaks with regard to the investigation and likely indictment of Roger Stone and people in and around Roger Stone like Jerry Corsi and others who we all know. And, this is something which can't be permitted. And what is the reason that Mueller is leaking all of this stuff? Because he's teeing it up. He's hoping that the House of Representatives is taken over by Nancy Pelosi and Maxine Waters and the Democrats, that impeachment will begin, and he's going to be the trigger to that. So look for something really terrible to happen after the midterms, particularly if the Democrats take control of the House, but it'll happen anyway. You're going to have Mueller's report, and it's going to trigger a call to impeach the president. Of course, if this happens, the country will be driven to a halt. But we got about 2,000 to 3,000 documents in just yesterday. We're going to be going through them. I took a quick look at them. We're going through them carefully. And I believe that this will be the legal death knell for Robert Mueller. They may not show direct grand jury leaks, but the totality of it, from what I've seen, shows that the press secretary, Peter Carr, of Robert Mueller, meets secretly at restaurants, in particular Paul Restaurant on Pennsylvania Avenue, and that's when the leaks occur, a lot of the leaks. And I believe that some of the prosecutors, like Andrew Weissman and others, have also leaked a lot of information. And this damages people, whether or not they're indicted or not. It damages President Trump and his lawyers, who are establishment lawyers, in fact, who call Mueller Bob. I mean, if you listen to Giuliani, Bob. I mean, why is he so cozy with Mueller? And then there were reports this week that Mueller has already sought to subpoena the president. I believe that what he's done, he's gone for a declaratory judgment in the district court in Washington, D.C. It perhaps is up at the D.C. Circuit right now. Apparently, there are a lot of pleadings under seal. That means they're kept secret. And he's asking the court for permission, in effect, to subpoena President Trump. We know that negotiations to have President Trump answer written questions and testify orally have ended. They've broken down. That's the right thing. No way he can appear in front of Mueller because of the corruption involved over in that prosecutor's office. But this is what we're facing, and this is why these documents are so important. And this is why, because this show is obviously the way that we communicate with the American people. You hear it here as it is. You hear the truth. You hear the real deal. I don't have to sugarcoat anything on Special Prosecutor with Larry Klayman. And that's why when you've heard me be critical of Fox News in the past, look, it's good that Fox News exists, but I'll tell you something. I can talk much more freely on Newsmax television, and I urge people to go to Newsmax television, to see my appearances, to see other people's appearances. We need competition in the conservative cable news area. Fox just doesn't cut it. It's getting to the point of ridiculousness. I mean, President Trump, and I love the guy, but he's packing his administration with people from Fox News. The latest that we've learned about is Heather Nauert, who's the spokesman at the State Department. Now, Heather's a very nice person. She's an attractive person. She's personable, but she has no experience other than being a radio and TV commentator, and now she's being considered for Secretary of State. She's from Fox News, obviously. Bill Shine, who's the deputy White House chief of staff, who covered up tens of sexual harassment scandals at Fox News, including a client of mine, Laurie Loon, that you're going to learn more about in the following weeks. She was the worst example of sexual harassment by Roger Ailes. He covered all that up. He was the guy that was coaching Kavanaugh when Kavanaugh was being accused of sexual harassment and all kinds of things during the recent hearings, his confirmation hearings. Hope Hicks is now back at Fox, worked in the White House communications office. So, we need some competition, and I urge you to go to Radio America, go to Newsmax, and get some alternative view, because let me tell you about Fox News. Drudge criticized Fox News today. Drudge had a show back in the 1990s, and because he showed a picture of a dead fetus, he was thrown off the air at Fox. The Bundys, they don't report their story. You won't find anything about the recent case on Fox. Judge Roy Moore, they won't report anything about him. He's no pedophile. He's a good man. He's a good Christian. And many, many others, including yours truly, because I've spoken out against Fox, and I also say what I think. I wanted to say that Fox, didn't report things properly under Obama. The real story was Obama, who is half Muslim, sympathized with being a Muslim. He did everything he could to harm Israel. He is an anti-Semite. The president is not. So go to Radio America and go to Newsmax, and please distribute this show, share it with your friends. It's important that they get the truth. I'll be right back with Ryan Bundy, who's going to talk about his quest to be governor of Nevada and also these lawsuits and why it's so important.
And now, 4 words that make corrupt politicians make wee-wee in their little pants.
Transparency and the rule of law will be the touchstones of this presidency.
But we have to pass the bill so that you can find out what is in it.
Special Prosecutor Larry Klayman.
Be the one who makes our country great again. Go to freedomwatchusa.org and donate.
I'm back with my friend, my client, someone who I admire a great deal, along with his entire family, Ryan Bundy. Ryan is running for governor of the great state of Nevada. By the way, you say Nevada, not Nevada. That's what they say on the East Coast. I learned that over these last many years. And Ryan stands up for the American people. He stands up for the people of Nevada. He's different than his 2 competitors out there. I've endorsed him in my personal capacity. I've never endorsed anybody before, any political candidate. But I feel so strongly about him and his family that I had to come out. And just this week, we filed another lawsuit, in the U.S. District Court for the District of Columbia for the prosecutorial abuse and the tyranny that occurred at Bunkerville. We talked about that in the lead into the show. But I want to introduce you now to Ryan Bundy. He's been on our show again. And Ryan, I want you to explain the background of your family, why the land is so important, why it's important not just to you, but to the people of Clark County and Nevada and the United States, and how you're standing up for them, and what separates you from your 2 competitors, Adam Laxalt, and frankly, I don't even remember the Democrat's name because it's it doesn't really matter at this point. But you are special. So, Ryan, talk to the American people right now. Explain to them why they need to support you.
All right. Well, number one, my family, my background, we've been here since 1877 when pioneer ancestors moved into the area. We began to settle on the land and establish rights upon here, rights by prior appropriation and beneficial use of the land and the resources. And, of course, that is the basis for the laws in Nevada, preemptive use. Those who are here first establish the rights first. And so my family has been here as long and longer than any, of course, besides the Native Americans. Now, Nevada state law upholds our rights, but the Bureau of Land Management, the federal government, does not want to recognize those rights and does not consider or recognize even statehood. Now, Nevada was made a state in 1864, but has never been treated properly as a state. It's always been, a subdivision, so to speak, of the federal government. It's always been treated like a territory rather than a state. Now, as governor, I intend to correct that, to make sure that the Constitution for the United States is upheld, to make sure that Nevada is recognized as a sovereign state, equal in footing to the original 13 states, that the land, all of the land and resources within the state belong to the state and her people, except for those pieces of property which has been properly purchased by Congress from Nevada after getting Nevada state legislature's consent in accordance with Article 1, Section 8, Clause 17 of the United States Constitution. By doing this, Nevada's people will benefit. They will be able to benefit from the land and the resources like they never have been before. This will bring greater freedom to Nevada. There's other aspects to this. Of course, the land issue is close to me because of my tie to the land and our rights upon it. But this is not just for us. This is for the benefit of all Nevadans. My competitors, Adam Laxalt and Steve Sisolak, they do not understand the proper form of government. They do not understand what statehood really is. They are, I don't know what the right terminology for it. They're just clones of the federal government. They just
they're establishment politicians, Ryan, that don't stand for anything. That's the bottom line.
Well, they just play along. They'll just go along, play along to get along, rather than to stand up for something correct. They do not understand the proper form of government, what government is actually supposed to do for the people. And people are supposed to be free. And government's only supposed to be there to help the people establish and protect their rights. That's it. Government's not supposed to be intrusive in our lives. They're not supposed to be mandating and forcing us to do things. Government is there only to be an aid. And when they do other things besides that, they become intrusive in our life. That's called tyranny. And that's what's happening. That's what's taking place. And these two other men will not do anything to correct that. I will.
The irony here, and it's sad, is that you, Ryan, are the true Republican. Okay, when I ran for the Senate in Florida, that's what I said. Larry Klayman, true Republican. The Republican Party today has, except for President Trump, has gone far astray, and the president, needs to understand too that you're the guy that really is the Republican here. And I also, we talked a little bit about Fox News in the middle of this show. Is that they've had Adam Laxalt on several times, but they don't have you on, okay, because they've become just simply a clone of the establishment Republican Party. And that's why I'm having you on today, because people need to hear this. This show is heard in Las Vegas. It's a big station and all around the country. And that you need to get the word out. I wrote a letter to Fox News. I said, please put Ryan Bundy on. No response. And this is why we need competition in the conservative media market, because Fox has simply become an arm of the Republican Party. It's frankly not just embarrassing, but it doesn't serve the interests of the American people. Now, there have been two television shows, I was talking about that earlier, that are a takeoff on your family. Okay, one is called Heartland. It's actually done by the Canadian Broadcasting Network. It comes out of Calgary, which is like the West. I mean, it's the same way of life. And there's another one called Yellowstone with Kevin Costner. So Hollywood has actually caught the gist and the popularity of ranching, of owning the land, of the basic American rights. And I want you to talk a little bit about, what the land means, okay? Because land is everything. It's the only thing you can count on if everything else goes south, so to speak.
Well,
it's the American way
it's
of
even
life.
more than that. It's not just if everything goes south, but currently in our modern world, everything we have, the food we eat, the clothes we wear, the car we drive, the computer you do your business on, the phone we're talking on right now, everything we have derives from the land and the resources. There is nothing that we have that does not come from the land. Now we obtain that in many different ways. There's agriculture, there's mining, collecting of the minerals, but all of these things are where we get our stuff. That is wealth. Wealth is not dollar bills. Wealth is the things that we have that make our life easier. And so all wealth comes from the land, every bit of it. And so those who control the land and the resources control the wealth, and those who control the wealth control the people. And so, that power is supposed to be in the hands of the people, in the hands of the individuals. It's not supposed to be gobbled up and in control of a government or gobbled up and controlled by large corporations. It's supposed to be in the hands of the people. That's the way God intended it. That's the way he set it up. Now, and that's the problem. The government's trying to gobble up and control all the land and the resources, therefore control all the wealth. And we're just their minions, their slaves, their subjects is the way they're viewing it. And yet I view it as though I am a king of my own castle, king of my own place, and I am able to utilize the land and the resources for my benefit, those that I claim and that I use. Now, everybody else has that same right to do that same thing, to be able to use the land and the resources for our benefit. And but we can't do that if we're having to fight for it all the time. We should be able to live in peace and to be able to go about our business without having to battle every day or worry about being shot in the back by a federal agent, which is, quite frankly, where we're at right now.
Well, and Ryan, you still have a bullet in your shoulder, correct?
Yeah, I do. Yep, I took one of those already. Yes.
Yeah, and you kept it as evidence. So it's, you are a brave person. But, the land in general, talk a little bit about how many ranchers have lost their ranches, the American way of life, how you're one of the last ranchers standing, and how you're fighting not just for ranchers, but for everybody, the people of Nevada, people of the United States. This is why I tear over. I teared over when, your indictment was dismissed. Your dad came out, looked at the sky and said, "Thank the Heavenly Father." It was raining because that's good for ranchers. You would not have won without God's grace. And it was a miracle. And so tell us just a little bit about that in the remaining few minutes that we have, because your story is an American story, and that's what I want people to understand.
Well, and you're right. When we talk about a rancher on this land, you think about this desert landscape. Maybe people back east don't understand desert, but the desert here is very sparse, and it's really not good for a whole bunch on the surface anyway. But a cow can eat and graze upon this land and turn these bushes and grass that is not otherwise usable to man into a usable commodity, into wealth, turn it into red meat and food for our families. Now, in Clark County, there used to be 53 ranchers. Now, this is just one county in Nevada, but there was 53 ranchers, and they are all gone except for just my dad, just us. We are the last rancher standing in Clark County. Now, that's not just a problem here in Clark County, but all across the West. The cattle numbers are below 50% what they used to be historically. And why is this? It's because the federal government are running the ranchers off the land. And in the meantime, America is not producing enough beef for our own, and we're having to buy beef from other countries. That's ridiculous. Again, they're manipulating and controlling the wealth. When it comes to, go ahead.
No, I was going to say that's important. I understand that. I come from a meat packing family. My family was in the pork business, and this is what we eat. This is who we are, and our beef is the best beef in the world. And for us to have to buy from Japan or anywhere else at 3 times the price is ridiculous. So that's the common sense aspect of what's happening. But you're right, Ryan. I mean, this is our way of life, and we're losing it.
Well, and that's ridiculous. We should be a country that's self-sufficient. We certainly have plenty of resources to be so. If we and it's only the government that is restricting that. And there, anyway, back to I want to talk about the religious aspect to this, and because you brought it up and mentioned it. But it is only by the grace of our Father in heaven that we were able to become free again. The government certainly wanted us dead. They either wanted us dead by the bullet of a gun or by incarceration, end our lives through captivity. And that was their goal. That was their intent. But we made it through that. And it was only by the good grace of God. And we got to rely upon him. We can't leave. Our founding fathers stated that this form of government was only sufficient for a moral and religious people. And if we're not going to be moral and religious, if we're not going to recognize our Creator and our Maker and honor his commandments, then we're not going to be worthy of his blessings. And we have to be if we want to be prosperous.
Well, that's very well said. I feel the same way, and that's why I gravitated to you, your dad, your mom, your entire family, because it is a miracle. We were up against all odds in that trial. Now, of course, Jeff Sessions, our Attorney General, has allowed the prosecutors to appeal it. He's a defendant in the lawsuit we just filed last Wednesday. He, as well as Eric Holder, as well as Loretta Lynch, as well as James Comey, they all wanted, basically, as you put it, to have you dead because you threaten their power. You threaten their ultimate power, and the arrogance of people in Washington, D.C., and that's why the case was brought there, is unbelievable. And, Ryan, you're the only one out there who's running for governor who will stand up to them. In fact, Adam Laxalt is a tool of Washington, D.C. His grandfather, Paul Laxalt, was a senator. He was a good senator, friend of Ronald Reagan. But, their time has come and passed. And Adam Laxalt doesn't stand for anything. He's just simply there. He has the Laxalt name. But a name is not enough. I think the Bundy name is worth 1,000 times more because you actually put it on the line and you risked your life and you won the West again. Thank you, Ryan, for coming on.
Thank you.
I'll be right back with the final segment of Special Prosecutor with Larry Klayman.
Before he was a trial lawyer, he sliced him and diced him.
People used to ask me, Larry, what caused you to start Judicial Watch and now Freedom Watch, given the powerful forces in this country that put you at risk?
In a meat packing plant.
I'm the son of meat packers in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. I know how to slice and dice.
A very special prosecutor, Larry Klayman.
If you'd like to support Freedom Watch and this radio show, go to freedomwatchusa.org.
We just heard from Ryan Bundy, who's running for governor in Nevada. Super important. I mean, if there's any race around this country that means something to such an extent as to save our American way of life, this is it. I urge you to support Ryan Bundy. Go to his website. There's not many days left before the election, but every little bit helps. And I want you to remember who he is and who the Bundy family is, because we're not done. This entire fight is continuing in the courts. We have to take the appeal. We have to defend that was filed by Jeff Sessions, the Attorney General. We're going to have to fight that in the Ninth Circuit, which is a difficult circuit, particularly for a Bundy, particularly for Larry Klayman as well. I mean, they're ultra-leftist up there. And we also have these lawsuits in the courts. I have a lawsuit for 2 of the defendants that were unjustly indicted, along with Clive and Ryan and his brothers, Rick Loveland and Stephen Stewart. We're fighting there. The government had no evidence, and they just threw them into the mix. It's just unbelievable, and they spent 2 years in prison as well. But it points out why, again, as I say, we need competition in the conservative media, because you don't hear this anywhere else. People ran away from the Bundys. Fox News ran away from the Bundys. And that's why I also have lawsuits for Sheriff Joe Arpaio. Fox News ran away from Sheriff Joe Arpaio, and the New York Times defamed him shortly after the primary election in Arizona. We have a large lawsuit for him, and I urge you to be supportive of that as well. Go to freedomwatchusa.org and contribute tax-deductible contributions for Sheriff Arpaio, because the leftist media needs to be taken down. We have a lawsuit against Sacha Baron Cohen. This one's in my private capacity for Judge Roy Moore, who was called a pedophile on TV. Now, Sacha Baron Cohen is a lowlife. He's nothing. But we need to set an example that you can't lie to people and get them fraudulently induced to go on your television show, which was put on by Showtime, and let people get away with it. We have cases against the social media companies, against Google, against YouTube, against Twitter, against Instagram, against Apple, all of them, because they're discriminating against conservatives. Just this week, Laura Loomer, who's become quite prominent for standing up to the left, she was removed from Twitter. But at the same time, Louis Farrakhan, that vile anti-Semite, that vile anti-Christian, that black Muslim who incited the death of police officers in Dallas, Texas, and we have a lawsuit for that at Freedom Watch as well against Farrakhan and the rest. He is still on Twitter. He's still on YouTube. So these leftist media companies, along with people like George Soros and others who finance the left, and Barack Obama, who's now out there campaigning for Andrew Gillum in my native state of Florida. Gillum will destroy the state of Florida if he's elected. It's unbelievable, this guy. He's a socialist. He's an anti-Semite. He's anti-white. You know, this is what we're up against. So we need to have a voice. We need to be able to communicate. And, okay, it's good you have Fox News, but it's better if you listen to the other networks and stations as well. So I want you to share this show on Radio America, radioamerica.com. Go to freedomwatchusa.org. We post the podcast every week. I want you to watch Newsmax Television, because I'm on there frequently as a commentator. I'm going to have a show on there in the near future. So you need to really, really look at more than Fox News and get a lot of conservative opinion as to what's going on these days, because Fox News is the arm of the establishment Republican Party. That's the money train for them. That's how they make a lot of money. That's how they boost ratings. Hannity is all about ratings. He's all about money. He invested in tens of millions of dollars in slumlord housing in Atlanta using government subsidies to do it. These people are not the real deal. What is the real deal is Radio America, Newsmax, and other entities that are out there allowing Larry Klayman and people like me to tell the truth. You won't see Ryan Bundy on Fox News, but you'll see him on other networks. So tune in next week. Go to freedomwatchusa.org. Contribute to our cause. We are your Justice Department. Join our Justice League. You are the superheroes, you, the American people. We will stand up. We will fight. We will win. No doubt about it. In the words of Winston Churchill in World War II, victory at any legal and peaceful cost. And don't forget to vote. I haven't told you what to vote for. You vote from your heart, and you vote with God's divine grace, because we need to save this country. But the politicians are not everything. You are everything. And remember that. God bless you. God bless America. God bless your family. And God save America. We'll be back next week with another edition of Special Prosecutor with Larry Klayman.